And so, you know, in our sport, sometimes being really good young it's great in the moment, right? But it can be detrimental long term. You know, I think if you look back over your career and see other youth or junior champions that you've kind of competed against and such, some are still in the sport, some are, right? And to be clear, there's a whole bunch of reasons why that's true, right? But for you, as someone who had that early success and is still in it, you know, obviously competing at a very high level with what you're trying to do, and we'll talk about that. But can you talk about some of the like feelings, emotions, pressures, and such that happened with that success at a young age?
There's a book, The Diary of a Wimpy Kid, which talks about how like if in grade 3, if you're like the fastest guy in school, it's like you're the guy. So it's like you're not even the guy in like the sport world, but you're the guy socially too. And then just like early on, like everyone just knows like you're the running guy. Like it's like, oh, you're going to the Olympics. It's like, okay, well, like I'm freaking in grade 5 or grade 6 or something like that. And it's just so basically your entire identity is built around that, regardless if you want it to be or not. Like you can't, I don't know, it feels like you can't show up to practice and just have an off day. It feels like you can't show up to a race and just have a mediocre race. And even until recently, it's hard for me to be like, oh, this is just like kind of a race to test fitness, but more for training. Like that's kind of like a hard thing for me to reconcile. And then I think, through that process, like I think I was really good in grade 6 and 7. Puberty hit. I got destroyed in grade 8. Grade 8 was so brutal. I just remember getting it to like the final BC provincial championship, and we were doing the 800, and some guy, his name was Nathan at the time. He was just a 100-meter guy, and he was stepping up to the 800, obliterates the field, and that was like one event that I used to be so good at, and it's like so demoralizing. And then you go through a whole build of like cross country being like, wow, I suck and I got to work twice as hard. But I think I just, that sort of mentality, like even from the wins and the biggest losses in the season, like grade 8 got destroyed, doubled down, worked like 10 times harder. Grade 9, I think I got I don't know if it was the BC stadium record or BC record, and then won the youth 2K steeple title. And I think after that, it was like the same thing. Like I still came back and I started working twice as hard. So it's just, you kind of have those expectations, like you have to keep rising to the occasion and doing more. And so more and more became the theme. And then, with coaches over time and yourself included, sometimes the main message was basically just every week, like, by the way, reminder, put it on a billboard in front of your head, like less is more. Less is more in training. And you don't always have to do twice as much to keep progressing over time.
So, and I think what's really interesting about that, it's a very hard lesson because there's duality to that idea about doing more, right? Or maybe better put, it's a double-edged sword, right? Because obviously you need to do progressively more in smart distributions across the lifespan of being an athlete to get better. You can't just stay static with your training and get better, right? But I think, and I know this, but you've probably also had some negatives in your career because of that attitude, right? And so if you look back, maybe we transitioned to, end of high school, going to college, you went to one of the premier programs at the time, and now again too, right? University of Washington. What was that like, kind of with that mentality, going from being a really good Canadian youth junior to a scholarship athlete at one of the biggest middle distance at the time schools in the US?
You're always chasing that feeling like you're working really hard, but then you are pushing yourself to be at the front, to be like noticed, to get like that recognition from a team perspective. And very much so, like you just can't you just can't keep doing that as a whole. And especially going to college, like I think I came into college not only as not the fastest guy, but also like doing the least amount of mileage. I was coming in injured at the time, and so it's a really weird experience to go from being told you're really special when you come on like a visit to like a college campus, and like the coach is hyping you up and everything's personalized to you from start to finish, and this multi-day experience going down to Seattle. And then, you're showing up as the injured kid who's like somewhat forgotten, and may not be getting the attention you dreamed of or you thought that was like normal, especially compared to high school where it's like you had a team of like 10 other guys you're training with, and like usually if you were one of the five like consistently showing up, like naturally you got way more attention. So yeah, I'm not sure if that answers that necessarily, but I think from an attention perspective, it's like sort of selfish that you're just like, oh, I expect to continually get that attention, and that gratification, and then sometimes it doesn't come, and expectation versus reality just makes you really question what you're doing, and then you try to rely on what do you know to get better, and sometimes you go into those cycles of do more and then get injured, do more, get injured, and stuff like that.